Welcome back to another episode of Cocktails and Tea. I am your host, Cherie. What's up, y'all? How y'all doing? I hope that all is well with all of you. I'm back with another historical tea episode today. Today we're discussing the suppressed and long forgotten real historical actual factuals about the origin of Memorial Day, honey. So we're gonna get right into it. So if you're like me and you're a cocktail lover who's interested in history and want to learn more about the history they did not teach you in school, like the piece of history we're gonna discuss today that I didn't learn in school. Well, if you're like me, then go and get your cocktails ready. Today I'm sipping on the festive, refreshing, and fruity peach rosé sangria. Get into that. She pretty, right? I know. She's good too. Very good. Um, and per usual, you can have whatever cocktail or mocktail your heart so desires, honey. But if you want to know how to make this fun, delicious, beautiful, festive cocktail, then head over to my Instagram at Cocktails and TENT, or you can check out my YouTube channel, also Cocktails and TENT, and watch me make this beautiful cocktail and other cocktails as well. And as always, please drink responsibly. Please and thank you. Okay. Moving on. Without further ado, honey, let's get into this historical tea that it really brought me great joy to do this episode because it's just black people, my people, past and present, just never cease to amaze me. So moving forward, you're about to see what I mean. So I kind of broke this. So I'm going to talk about this in like two sections, right? And don't worry, I won't be before you long. Like, I really mean that this time because this is a short and sweet episode. But I'm going to start off talking about what they told us about the origin of Memorial Day versus the actual origin of Memorial Day. So I'm going to sip real quick. Hold up. And if you guys give this a try, please let me know and let me know how you like it. Moving on. Memorial Day, formerly known as Decoration Day, is a United States federal holiday observed on the last Monday of May, as we all know. And it's for mourning and honoring the men and women who died while serving in the United States Armed Forces. All of this, again, we know this, right? Because this is what they told us the origin is. And the origins date back to the years following the Civil War. Moving on. Now, Union Army General John A. Logan, who was the commander-in-chief of the Grand Army of the Republic, which was like a Union veteran organization. Now, he is widely credited with establishing the holiday. So this is how the story went, pretty much. General John A. Logan called for a national day for former soldiers and their communities to conduct ceremonies and decorate graves of their dead comrades. And he called for that day to be held on May 30th because according to him, that's when the flowers will be plentiful all over the nation. So the first National Memorial Day was held on May 30th, 1868 in Arlington National Cemetery. And of course, you know, there were other ceremonies and commemoration programs taking place all over the nation as well, partly because of Logan's call to action, but also because quiet is kept, honey, for real. People was doing that anyway. People was decorating. That's like a wartime tradition. People decorate the graves of the dead, the graves of the fallen soldiers. That was just the thing. The only difference is it was just not a specific national day of remembrance in that way. So just for context, you know, I'm a context girl. I need the full picture. But here's a quote from General John A. Logan, about that day. He said, quote, "The 30th of May, 1868 is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the late rebellion, and whose bodies now lie in almost every city, village, and hamlet churchyard in the land." So, end quote. And also, we all know that in 1971, Congress officially established Memorial Day as a federal holiday. And side note, Memorial Day is low key like, the unofficial start to summer. For many people, right? It's the unofficial start to cookout season, the unofficial start to, barbecue season, and just good old fun in the sun. Just had to put that on out there, moving forward. So let's get into the actual origin of Memorial Day. As we get into the actual origin of Memorial Day, I want you guys to keep this important fact in mind, that this historical fact that I'm about to tell you about predates the 1868 commemoration ceremony events held all over the country that was called by John Logan. This predates it by 3 years. 3 years. And I did not hear about this until like 2 years ago. And you're talking about something that went down in the 1800s, and we did not learn about it in school. It's not widely known, but hopefully when you hear it today, that you will tell other people, that you will spread the word about this, because this is an important historical fact, and we should have learned about this in school, and kids should absolutely learn about this in school, because we celebrate it every darn year. Okay, moving forward. Memorial Day, or Decoration Day as it was known in the back days, or during this time, it originated in Charleston, South Carolina, and it was organized by newly emancipated Black people, and it was held on May 1st, 1865. So in the last months of the Civil War, the white residents of Charleston largely like abandoned the city altogether. And just for context, like, the Civil War started in Charleston, South Carolina on April 9th, 1861, and it ended in Charleston, South Carolina on April 12th, 1865. So the city been through a little bit. It been through a little bit. It been through a little bit. It been through a lot of it, actually. But the residents of the white residents rather of Charleston left, and the Black residents remained, and then they proceeded to conduct a series of commemorations, if you will. So directly after the ending of the Civil War, I just want to put into context like what the environment was like at that moment in Charleston, where the war began and ended, and well, really in every state where the Civil War had taken place, the mood was somber, and there were bodies everywhere. Some bodies half buried in coffins, some were just unrecognizable body parts all over the place. And the Civil War was a very, very brutal, bloody, devastating war. Like, the scale of death and destruction is huge. Like, It was known as like the single bloodiest military conflict in American history. And it had like 620,000 Union and Confederate soldiers dead at the end of the Civil War. And just to put it into context in today's numbers, what that number would be, according to battlefields.org, they quoted that in today's population, as a percentage of today's population, the death toll would have risen to 6 million people dead. So that's a brutal war. So with that being said, during the last year of the war, the Confederate Army had converted in Charleston. They had converted the Planters Horse Track, which was called the Washington Racecourse and Jockey Club. And they turned that into a makeshift outdoor prison. And the prison was for, of course, the captured Union Army soldiers. But the Washington Racecourse and Jockey Club was one of those like posh country clubs. It's like a symbol of power for the elites during this time. For not really the elites, honey, the slave owners, the plantation owners, the slave holders, for them folks. But the Union soldiers were kept in the interior of the track, and it was said that the conditions were horrific. So horrific that at least 257 Union soldiers died of death and exposure. And after they died, they were swiftly buried in a mass grave and left there. That's how the Confederate Army left those soldiers there, until 28 black workmen went to the site and worked for 2 weeks to excavate the bodies and rebury them properly. Might I add, each soldier at that point had their own grave. Now, they couldn't mark the graves. They couldn't mark any of the graves with names because they had no names. These folks, again, was buried in a mass grave, and they were a prisoner of war. And so, those folks was really not trying to keep up with who was who. But those 28 black workmen cleaned and landscaped that grave site, and they also built a high fence around the cemetery, and the fence was 100 yards long and about 50 or 60 yards deep. So they painted the fence and they built an archway over the entrance, and they inscribed these words on that archway, quote, "Martyrs of the Racecourse," end quote. And on May 1st, 1865, at 9 a.m., black residents organized with some white northern missionaries and teachers. They organized and held a parade of 10,000 people, and they parade around on the slaveholders racecourse. Yes, God. Where plantation owners and slaveholders would flaunt their leisure and their wealth and their influence. They had a parade of 10,000 people that they organized. To me, and it's not lost on them, the symbol of power that race track holds. So to me, they're like taking their power back a little bit, to me. Moving forward, because you got to remember, they were newly emancipated. So this is powerful. So this is how the parade procession went. The parade procession was led by 3,000 black school children carrying loads of roses in their arms and singing John's Brown Body, which was like a Union Army marching song At the time, it was a very popular song at this time, moving forward. And so after the children, after the babies, came several hundred black women carrying flowers and wreaths and crosses. I know. And after them followed black men marching lockstep in cadence with them. And following the black men were groups of Union Army infantry. And then following them were other black and white citizens. So this was a full, 10,000 people. And we talking about like weeks after the Civil War ended. The Civil War ended again on April 12th, 1865. The first Memorial Day was held on May 1st, 1865. We're talking about weeks. It's remarkable. And it's a goddamn shame that we don't know anything about it and never heard anything about it. But, now we've heard it. Now it's our job to spread the word, to tell the truth, and not wait for them to tell it for us. Okay? Moving forward. So after the parade, they gathered into the cemetery enclosure. I was supposed to sip, huh? But they gathered into the cemetery enclosure, fitting in as many people as possible. And at that time, there was a children's choir there, and they sang the national anthem and America the Beautiful, and also several spirituals. And that was followed by 5 black ministers who spoke and read scripture and read from the scripture as well. And after this solemn commemoration, the crowd dispersed into the infield, and they did what many Americans do on Memorial Day. They enjoyed themselves. They had picnics. They listened to speeches. Actually, they listened to like 16 speeches, and they watched soldiers drill. Pretty much the same shit people do on Memorial Day. I'm just saying. Moving forward. Among the soldiers that drilled on that day was, of course, I've already mentioned the full brigade of Union Infantry, but also the famous 54th, 34th, and 104th United States Colored Troops, who performed a special, double columned march around the grave sites, And honey, that was the first Memorial Day. And to me, again, that shit was remarkable. 10,000 people weeks after you officially got your emancipation. That's, again, remarkable, significant, and attention must and will be paid. So I'm wrapping up now. Yes, honey, I told you it was a short show. It's a short show, short and sweet. Now, wrapping up, there were several towns, north and south, who claimed to be the birthplace of Memorial Day. However, all of their commemoration events, Decoration Day, decorating graves, whatever, was dated back to 1866, which means that was 1 year after the free black citizens of Charlotte, the free black citizens of Charleston held their Decoration Day, their Memorial Day, on May 1st, 1865. I'm gonna keep saying that date because that's an important date, and we all should know that date. May 1st, 1865 was the first Memorial Day. Okay, moving forward. Not up for debate. Argue with your mama. Moving forward. Now, in 1966, Waterloo, New York was declared to be the birthplace of Memorial Day by then President Lyndon B. Johnson. And to that I say, how, Sway? Because again, just like the other cities all over the nation that tried to claim that their city was the birthplace of Memorial Day, that was also their events in Waterloo also dates back to 1866. You 1 year late, boo. You 1 year late. They did this weeks after the Civil War. Just saying, moving forward. Now, the martyrs, the old martyrs of the race course gravesite is now gone. I know, because I would have loved to seen it. But the Union soldiers were excavated and moved again in the 1880s, and they moved them to a national cemetery in Beaufort, South Carolina. So that's whack, but okay. Because I would have loved to see the gravesite that the free citizens of Charleston built moving forward. Now, the old racetrack, however, is still there. It is now an oval road in Hampton Park, which is in Charleston. And they named, per usual, this should not be shocking to anyone, but they named that park after the white supremacist redeemed the South, former Confederate General Wade Hampton, after Reconstruction, which they did a lot of fuck shit after Reconstruction. We're gonna talk about it. I have a whole episode that I'm gonna dedicate just to Reconstruction, and it might have to be a two-parter. But I'm moving forward. Now, how is this important historical fact lost for over a century? I'll tell you how. Racism. Huh? Racism is how that historical fact was lost for over a century. This remarkable historical actual factuals was long suppressed until 1996, when Yale professor of American history and African American studies, scholar, author, historian, Dr. David W. Blythe discovered this story in 1996, as I said before, in a dusty, messy, unorganized Harvard University archive of old veterans papers at Holton Library at Harvard, of course. Now, he came across this information while researching a book on the Civil War. Or was he researching for a book? Because he wrote a few books on the Civil War. But I'm saying all that to say that this information, he discovered this information by happenstance. Like, he just happened to stumble across this paperwork. It makes me wonder what other historical documents or information is just yet to be discovered because it's stuck in some dusty box in some old historic university library basement or something. I don't know. It's just unfortunate, but I'm glad that this came to the light. And this historical fact is backed by, again, historical record, but also by newspaper reports from the time, from that day, actually. And it corroborated what David Blythe found, what he discovered. And in attendance that day was a New York Tribune reporter, and they described the event as, quote, a procession of friends and mourners as South Carolina and the United States never saw before, end quote. Sound pretty grand and significant and festive to me. and also the Charleston Daily Courier. They were also in attendance on that glorious day. Um, and according to David Blythe's 2001 book, which is about this commemoration ceremony, his book is called Race and Reunion: The Civil War in American Memory. Um, After regaining control of the state's politics at the end of Reconstruction, the white residents, well, not really the white residents, but the white Democrats in particular, erased the Black Americans from the story of Memorial Day. Now, we're going to get into it when we talk about Reconstruction more, when we talk about Reconstruction. But the Democratic Party of back then and the Republican Party was essentially flipped compared to where they are now. The Republican Party is back then is how the Democratic Party is now, and vice versa. But we'll get into more of that. I'll explain more. I'll go a little bit more into depth on a Reconstruction episode whenever that comes out, moving forward. But David Blythe, this is what he had to say about what I just told you about the white Democrats erasing the Black Americans from the story of Memorial Day. He had this to say, quote, "The white South was able to control first its own narrative and then a good deal of the nation's narrative," which is true, and that reigns true even in today's politics. Just saying. And honey, lastly, as far as the legacy of this beautiful historical fact that I'm so glad I stumbled upon, Charleston city officials held its first formal commemoration of African American roots of Memorial Day in 2010. And in 2011, they established a plaque, honey. However, there's no mention of this historical fact available online on the park's official website. That's by the Parks Conservancy. And also, y'all know damn well that they're not teaching this in school. Hell, they banning Black history at this moment. They're banning books, honey. We're on a straight track for fascism, and that's also another conversation for another day. But we all know that this little experiment that we call the country sometimes is ass backwards and could be a little ghetto, so none of that should be a shocker. United States is just kind of, the Florida of the world. But that's neither here nor there. Moving forward. And feel free to argue with your mama. You know what I'm saying? Because I said what I said. Just saying. Moving forward. Moving on to Shots for the Road. Shots for the Road is, I have two quotes this week. As you know, Shots for the Road or Shots for the Road is song lyric or a quote that directly correlates with the episode or I just find badass. And today I have two quotes. One is by David Blythe, the professor who discovered the actual factuals of the origin of Memorial Day. And the second quote is from Dot Scott, who is the president of the Charleston branch of the NAACP. So David Blythe quote is this, quote, "It's the fact that this occurred in Charleston at a cemetery site for the Union dead in a city where the Civil War had begun. And this was organized and done by African American former slaves is what gives it such poignancy." And to that, I agree. And the second quote is from Again, Dot Scott, president of the Charleston branch of the NAACP. And this is what they said, quote, many of the issues we have around race are based on the fact that these stories have not been told. It sends the message that the contributions of African Americans are not valued and respected. To that, I say facts to both of those. Facts. Both of those are actual and factual. Moving forward, honey. And with that, I am done. That's it. I told you it's short and sweet today. Thank you for listening to another episode of Cocktails and Tea. If you want to connect with me, then head over to cocktailsandteapodcast.com, where you can connect with me on Instagram and subscribe to my YouTube and watch the video version of this podcast, and also some of my stand-up comedy videos as well. Also, your reviews really encourage me and they help other people find this podcast. So if my podcast ever made you laugh or think, then please rate, review, and share it with a friend. Thank you, and until next time, love, light, and insight, boo. Cheers.